You are already here in the floating city that drifts with the slow clouds, and dusk has settled like a shawl across everything you can see. Lanterns glow along the curves of the stone bridges, their glass panes tinted amber and a little green as if they remember the color of late afternoon leaves. A soft wind moves steadily through the arches and over the smooth steps, carrying scents that belong to this hour and to the height at which you stand. Somewhere, a bell chimes once, then lets the sound lean out and fade. The world below is hidden under a deep, pale mist, and nothing rises from it but a sense of distance, like a gentle breath held low and steady. Tonight you tend to the oil for the lanterns. There is a small brass can with a hinged cap and a spout like a bird's beak. It has a dent in one side from a winter long ago when the metal was colder and your glove slipped. When you lift the cap, you can smell the oil even before you pour it. It smells like green olives pressed under a warm stone and like a narrow shelf in the storeroom where the wood has taken in 100 faint spills. You carry the can in your right hand because the spout pours truer from that angle, and you steady it with your left so the oil does not glug and leap. This is what you do as the sky turns the gentle color between blue and violet. This is what your hands understand without asking the mind to think. You cross the first bridge and your step is slow. Each lantern sits on a low iron bracket bolted into the stone with care that shows even in the small shape of every washer and nut. The glass on this first one is a little cleaner than the others because you wiped it just after the last rain. When you draw near, the faint smell of hot metal and the oil that burns warmly inside the wick meets the wind. It is a cousin to the scent in your brass can, but sweeter, touched by heat and faintly salted by the air. It is the anchor of this evening, the warm, clear smell of lamp oil that has just been kindled, steadying everything around it. You set the can at your feet and open the lantern's narrow door with its thin, curled latch. The hinge makes a tiny, whispered tick as it moves, and you hold the door so it will not swing and knock. The wick is short and even, trimmed earlier when the light was still high, and its end glows gently, not eager, not faint. The flame bows as the wind reaches, and then rights itself, and the smell of the burning oil deepens. It smells like pressed fruit and sunshine on old rope, like a cupboard with a small metal knob that warms under the afternoon. It smells exactly like dusk on these bridges is supposed to smell. You lift the can and tip it just so. The first drop hesitates at the lip of the spout, then slides down the little beak and into the brass cup where the wick's foot drinks. You do not look up. You keep your gaze on the dark oval of the reservoir. On the way, the oil thickens when the breeze cools it even a little on the accurate line of the pour. The sound is barely there, a small inward sound of liquid meeting its place, a thread in the larger hum of this floating city. You do not feel too much, only until the surface turns from a faint dullness to a clear, soft sheen. Then you lift the spout away and let the last thin string fall and break cleanly. You close the cap of the can with your thumb. You close the little door and feel the latch find its quiet seat. The scent from the flame wraps the motion and makes it whole. The cloud below the bridge has shifted, and you can see the shape of a darker layer away to the west where the wind must be knitting things together. the lantern shows its answer by burning warmer for a moment, then leaning again into its even task. You put your palm near the glass, close enough to feel the mild heat, not close enough to test it. The glass hums a little in your skin. The smell of the oil stays near the lantern and near your hands, folded on your breathing like a blanket's edge. You pick up the can again and move to the next lantern. The stone under your soles is smooth and holds the day's warmth longer than the railing does. You can feel the difference in your fingertips as you brush the iron and then rest against the parapet for a moment. The lantern here has a speck of something on the glass, probably a bit of pollen from a slow flower that grows in a hanging pot 2 bridges over. You rub it with the folded cloth you keep in your pocket. The cloth has a faint lemon scent from earlier when you wiped a bench, but it is the lamp oil that answers, steady as a note, reminding you to pour and trim and check again. The ritual moves with you like a small boat along the edge of a broad lake. It does not rush. It knows where the next dock is. As you pour for the second lantern, you notice the oil has thickened just a little since you began. The wind is cooler here, where the bridge is more exposed. You warm the spout between your palms for a few breaths before you tilt the can. The metal answers with its faint, remembered smell, a distant cousin to the oil, metallic and clean. The oil's scent comes stronger now, rising to meet your nose, and you taste it on the back of your tongue as the very lightest olive. You remember a time when someone suggested a different fuel that would burn brighter, less scent, more clean, and you said no quietly and returned to this. The smell is part of the city. It tells anyone who walks here that it is early evening. It tells them that the light is tended, and that the stone and the iron and the rope bridge beyond this one are not forgotten. The nearest chime, a cup-shaped bell with a line of beads within it, moves slightly and gives a quiet sound like small rain on an upturned bowl. It is not a melody, only a reassurance that nothing has changed except the angle of the breeze. The chime's string is tied to the ornamental finial of a lantern further along, where the curve of the bridge meets a landing. You will reach it soon enough, and you will pause and listen there, because that is the place where the oil's scent is held longest under the arch. The oil keeps you company as you walk. It lies in the air at your shoulder the way a gentle cat might settle and stand, one paw on the railing, looking out. You move on. Your thumb checks the cap on the can without thinking. Your other hand reaches for the next lantern's latch and knows the weight of its small resistance before it yields. You lift the little door again and you lean the can, and the oil moves forward and the smell braids itself with the drifting cold of the high air. The lantern's wick tastes the new pool and steadies. A moth drifts by, drawn to the heat but content to skirt the edge. You let the door close with the softest touch. The action is not new, and that is what you like. Nothing here is in a hurry to become anything else. The bridges arc gently and join each other at small plazas with low stone benches and planters that cradle shrubs with glossy leaves. From up here, each plaza feels like the pause between footsteps in a long corridor. The lanterns trace the edges, an interrupted line of amber that mirrors the ribbon of cloud below. You walk and stop, an easy pattern that keeps time with the city's own quiet. Every time you open a lantern, the same warm note of oil rises to meet you. It is always the same note and yet always different, shaped by the small differences of each place, of each breath of wind, of the way your hand lifts the lid. You welcome it like an old friend with a new scarf, familiar and lightly surprising all at once. On one plaza, the largest lantern is an older make, a heavy brass with filigree along the edges. It hums the way old brass hums when it is warm enough to remember the daylight. You open it and you can smell the difference in the way the oil meets this metal. It is deeper, with a faint sweetness that hides in the turned corners where your cloth reaches only now and then. You pour slowly and the oil slides in like a ribbon. It pools just at the lip and then disappears, taken downward along the wicks channel, drinking the same way a plant stem drinks slow water through the night. The first time you noticed that, you stood very still and watched the way the surface dipped and then rose. Tonight, you only note it and move on. The ritual is not a lesson, it is a conversation between hands and flame. Past the plaza, a narrow bridge crosses to a row of low roofs where the weather vanes are shapes of birds that never fly this high. The vanes turn lazily, pointing toward a neighboring island in the chain. There is a rope railing along the edge here, thick with tar and rubbed smooth by palms. Its smell says old ships and sun showers, and the oil scent gently overlays it, not covering, but joining. When you lift the next lantern, you are standing at a point where two winds meet. The flame inside leans neither way, it stays steady in its glass. The oil scent deepens for a moment, as though the lantern takes a deliberate breath and then resumes its calm. You pour and count. You do not count numbers. You count the way the drops slide and the way the air grows a shade warmer. You count the way your wrist knows when to lift back so the last thin string does not gather on the rim. You count the small sounds. The cap's light tap against the spout, the lean of the glass door, the soft click of the latch. Between each action, the smell returns, one steady line through everything. Sometimes you think of it as a line drawn with a charcoal pencil, not entirely even, but true, running along the day and into the night. Sometimes you think of it as a shawl, the kind woven from wool a little rough at first, then soft with years, holding the scent of the oil the way fabric holds a story. You reach the landing where the chime hangs. It is shaped like a little cup with a lip turned gently outward, and the beads inside are smooth stones the color of washed bone. The string is braided from 3 twines, and someone tied a knot at the very end that looks like a little rose. You like to stand here and feel the breeze come around the pillar. You do not touch the chime. You do not need to. When the wind has an idle thought, it shares it, and the chime gives a single quiet sound, then lets the air move on. The oil in the lantern beside it sends a living scent into this mix, warm and very nearly edible in its comfort. It is not food. It is not a candle meant for sweetness. It is a work scent, a keeping scent, one that says the light will not darken too soon, and that when it does, someone has seen to it for the morning. You pour at this lantern, and your shoulder eases a fraction, the way something eases when it reaches a familiar seat. The brass cup inside is well worn, ringed with the memory of 100 fill lines. You lean the can, and the oil goes in with confidence. The smell rises and wraps itself around the chime's little note. For a breath, you feel as if the city has your breath in its hands, and it is holding it gently, not to keep it, but to know it is there. A gull drifts past at a distance far below, small as a thought, and then is gone. The mist receives it and says nothing. The lantern burns. On the next bridge, you see a man with a cart far off, his back bent with blankets piled high. He moves like someone moving through sleep, his feet sure without looking. You let him pass, and the cart's wooden wheel makes a faint, slow sound on the paving, like a drum with a practice cloth over it. When he is gone, the smell of his wool drifts behind him only long enough to be folded into the one you keep noticing. The lamp oil remains the strongest line in what your nose understands. It sits forward. It does not force its way. It simply is the center. You're glad for that. It means this evening has its own spine. It means this walk will keep its shape as the light changes. Where the bridges narrow again, a rope ladder hangs down to a lower catwalk that touches the edge of a storage tower. This is where crates come up sometimes from the island to the left. You never see the lower places. They stay covered by the mist like the back of an envelope no one opens. You pause and lean over the parapet just enough to feel the wind's entire body. It is carrying a memory of rain that fell somewhere else. The lamp oil's warmth answers, present and particular, close to your face. You have always liked this, to stand at the edge of air that has been long and far, and then to return to this smell that is small and near, and to be between them for a moment before your hands begin their careful pour again. You move on, and your footsteps make the quiet sound of cloth over stone, and the lanterns gather around that sound as if to listen. Each one has a different way the soot gathers at the top of its chimney. Each one has a different pattern of heat in the glass. Each one gives the oil its brief moment to rise and introduce itself to the air. The oil, for its part, does not change its nature. It remains olive and brass and the memory of sunlight on ropes. It remains a warm, steady thing that loves a small flame. You like that about it. You like the way it does not need to announce itself loudly. You like the way it gives the bridge a scent the bridge would not have on its own. A pair of cats cross ahead of you, one black, one tabby gray, their tails upright but curved at the tip as if making a note. They pass under a bench and vanish behind a coil of hose. A woman on a nearby terrace lifts a kettle and pours into a mug, and the wet smell that follows is tea, but only for a moment before the oil's warm line gathers it and lets it go. The oil makes the terrace seem part of the bridges, and the bridges part of the terraces. It is the slender glue of the evening, and you carry more of it in the brass can, which is lighter now, but still sure in your hand. Here, the next lantern's latch is a little stiff. You know this one. It catches in damp weather. You press your thumb at just the right place and it lifts with a small sigh. The candle-sized flame inside is not a candle, and it will not have to be replaced. It has a grid where the wick sits and the cup below cradles the oil with affectionate tolerance. A spider has set a small web in the corner, careful not to cross the glass. You do not disturb it. It will find another place when it must. You pour and watch the way the oil makes the spider web's thread glisten for a moment where the air moves. Then the web becomes a drawing again, and the smell leans back into the lantern's hush. At the far end of this bridge, a stair curves upward to a lookout point where a weather vane in the shape of a heron remembers to point east. The lantern up there is broader, the better to show the message of the wind to anyone who cares to check it at night. You take the steps slowly, not because you need to, but because the oil likes not to be rushed, and your own steps feel truer when they are long and even. At the top, the lantern is warmer, its glass warm as a cheek in winter. You open it, and the smell of the oil that is already burning comes to meet the smell from your can, the two folding into one. You think of hands folded together to keep something safe. You pour and listen as the drop line changes pitch when the cup nears its place. It is a talk between the oil and the metal, between air and liquid, between your steady wrist and the weight of the spout. Beyond this point, the bridge takes you to a row of arches that open toward the heart of the city, where a square holds what the day does not need to hurry away. There is a long table under a roof where maps are left in the afternoon for anyone to add a note or a small sketch of a useful current. The lanterns line the edges of this table, and their scent is strong here where the air turns in soft eddies. You pour at each one, and the smell rises and settles, rises and settles, each time familiar and each time new. If the maps could smell, you think, this is what they would know about this evening. They would say oil, and they would mean light and hands and the way the eyes see better when there is a scent they trust. There is a glass blower's shop at the square's far corner. The furnace is banked now and only whispers. The last breath of heat from it carries a clean, sandy smell. It is not the center of things tonight. The oil from the lanterns in the square gathers it in like someone who pulls a blanket closer to tuck in a stray corner. You pass the shop and tip the can over another lantern. You breathe in the oil's scent and it fills the front of your mind gently. It does not push the glass blower's smell away. It simply asks it to be quiet and to wait its turn. The city feels listened to when you do this, and you do it every night the same way. At the edge of the square, a small canal of air slips between two buildings and brings the faintest echo of the ocean that no one has seen in a long time. It is a cold line in the air, and you feel it on your cheeks. The oil's smell brightens in answer, not with brightness in light, but with brightness in recognition. It says, yes, that is there, and I am here, and we are both present. You pour at the lantern that hangs right by the corner where this air moves, and you watch the way the flame licks and then returns to its still small tower. You imagine, not for the first time, that the city is a ship moored in the middle of a sky harbor and that your pouring is a sailor's work. The oil's smell makes the thought right, not as a story, but as a feeling your hands accept. Two children, hand in hand, walk with an older woman who carries a basket of old fruit. They move slowly and talk about nothing you can make out. Their shoes make that gentle tapping that is not hard at all, and the oil's smell follows them a short way and then returns. You think of the fruit and you think of the oil and how both come from pressed things, from something gathered and made to give more of itself. You do not say this aloud. You pour and you shut, you pour and you shut, and your feet know the turns without looking. The scent of oil is the place where these thoughts come to sit, and then they rise and drift off like a low cloud that decides to slide between rooftops. You come to a bench where you like to set the can down and check the wick trimmers. The trimmers are in a little leather pouch that holds their shape and their small sheen. The leather has its own smell, but you have used the trimmers so often near the lamps that the pouch smells mostly of oil now. It is a light film that will never go, a story told so often it becomes the very language of the telling. You trim one wick that has flared, and you smell the moment the char is gone and the living oil takes over again. You touch the cap of the can the way one would touch a shoulder passing someone in a crowded place, gentle and friendly. Then you stand and go on. Down a narrower way, where the stone is older and paler, the lantern brackets are a matched set. The smith who made them cut leaves in the iron, each leaf a little different, and the pattern runs along the row like quiet laughter. You pour for each one, and the smell rises up and pours itself over the leaves, as if to varnish them with memory. The smell is the varnish. It is how a night keeps near enough to be remembered. It is how a city says, yes, the light was there and it had a body you could not see but could know with your whole face. You breathe it. You keep your hands steady. You tip the can and let the oil run its short, perfect course. Where the path turns, there is a small, sheltered nook where a rope swing hangs for someone to sit in the wind and watch the mist drift on the lower level. No one sits now. The rope is still. The lantern near the swing is the one that always smells the richest. You have wondered why. It is not larger than the others. It is not newer. It may simply be the way the air cups itself here under the little overhang. You lift the latch and you pour, and as you do, the smell from the cup and the wick rises and holds itself right under your nose, and you feel it like a friendly weight, like a hand on your shoulder. The oil is alive to you. It is not a thing. It is a companion. It has come to this lantern 1,000 nights, and it will come 1,000 more. Beyond the swing, the way opens out onto a balcony that overlooks the indigo edge of the world. The mist looks solid from here, like linen stretched very tight. But you know, if you were to try to stand on it, you would go straight through. The lanterns along this balcony are evenly spaced, and you can see their flames through the glass as you walk. They are small, little orange ovals with a darker seed at the center. The oil gives them their body. It is the same oil in the same can, and yet each flame is its own person moving quietly. You open them one by one, and you pour, and each time the scent rises to greet you with equal affection. If you could write a letter in scent, this would be what your hand would make on the paper. You turn at the end of the balcony and begin the descent along a shallow stair that follows the curve of a long wall. The wall has niches carved into it where small finches sometimes roost when the wind is stubborn. 2 finches are there now, heads under wings, and when you pass, they do not lift their heads. The oil smell is soft here, partly because the wall cups what you carry and lets it shuffle ahead of you a little way. It is like walking inside someone's pocket, warm and safe. You pour again and again, and the rhythm settles deeper into your shoulders and elbows until your body is the measure. that the city uses to keep this evening's time. At a lower level, a rope bridge trembles slightly as you step onto it. The oil inside the can holds its own small moment of movement and then calms. The smell of the rope is heavy and kind, and the oil leans into it like a conversation between two elders who have known each other since before anyone can say. You open a lantern halfway across, and a small gust tries to lift the door from your fingers. You hold it. You do not resist. You let the wind find its way and then settle. You pour and see the surface of the oil flicker. The smell comes up strong and sure, and somehow braver here, as if it wants to show the wind that it knows how to hold its own. You smile and close the latch, and the rope bridge gives a tiny sound like a cello sigh. On the far side, washing lines strung between two rails carry cloths pinned with small wooden clips. They barely move. The cloth itself has that open, clean scent of a thing that has forgotten the lint of the day. The oil reminds it of night. It does not argue. It snuggles under what the oil tells it is happening now. You pour and move, pour and move. A small jar of matches sits on a corner of a post, and you tap it once to make the matches settle. You have not needed them all evening. The flames keep their lives easily when you give them this oil, and the smell they make says they are grateful in the way a living thing is grateful, without words. You cross one more small span where potted herbs sit in a row, each in a different kind of clay vessel. The person who put them there has a sense of humor. There is a lavender bush in a teapot without a lid. There is a rosemary plant in a jar that once held bolts. The scent is green and pointed, and then the oil folds it in. You are not surprised when your feet know how to go slower here. It is not because the path is narrow. It is because this is a place where the evening often decides to take a longer breath. You pour, and you do not hurry, and the oil smells like it did at the very first lantern, only now deeper, as if it too has been walking and is warmed to the work. You arrive at a small door, painted a blue that always looks new, even when the paint must be old. It leads to the storeroom where the oil is kept in its larger tins. You could go in and fill the can before you finish. You decide not to. There's enough to complete the round, and you like to finish with the weight light in your hand. You stand for a moment with your palm on the door, and you feel the cool through the wood. You can smell the oil from inside, a heaviness that lives in the grain of the shelves. It is a smell that has nothing to do with flame. It is the raw oil, simple and clean, waiting to be asked. It pleases you to know it is there. There is a bell above a bakery, though no one bakes at this hour. The bell has a crack, not wide, but enough that it must be rung with care when the morning comes. You pass under it and feel the urge to reach up and lay your fingers on the rim. You do not. You keep one hand on the brass can. The oil's scent keeps you exactly where you are supposed to be. It is a handrail for your attention. It is the thing that keeps you here. Instead of scattering out into thoughts of the bell or the loaves that will rise before dawn, it is the smell you return to when you find yourself elsewhere. You breathe it and you pour at the next lantern, and the evening smooths out like paper under a palm. You cross a threshold to a little garden on a deck at the very edge of the city's reach. someone has carved a fish into the lintel. The fish's eye is a small glass bead that catches the lantern light and throws it back in a friendly way. You open the lanterns here one by one. There is a bench with a blanket folded in careful quarters, and you do not sit. You lean on the bench with your knee and pour, and the oil smell hangs for a long time before it moves on. It is almost still here, and the oil takes the chance to show you everything it is: the fruit, the sun, the pressing, the metal, the wick, the flame, the choice made again and again to be patient. At the far end of this deck, a small plaque reads in hand-carved letters, "The sky holds." Someone must have put it there the first time a strong wind came and the clouds shook themselves and the ropes sang. You touch the plaque for a breath and then you pick up your can again. You pour at the last lantern on the deck and you look out. There's the mist, there's the twilight, there's the hint of a planet bright enough to be seen even now. The oil smell clings to your hands, and you bring your palms near your face for a moment and breathe in. It is the one true line in the whole evening, and you can follow it back to the first lantern without thinking. The can is light as you return along the way you came. You check without stopping. Your thumb finds each latch and makes sure. Each little door is secure. Each flame is steady. The oil will carry them through until they do not need to burn. The smell will remain even after the flame's shape is gone, a quiet presence in the glass and the metal. You notice how the air has changed only a little, a degree of coolness more, a slight spring in the rope here, a lengthening in the bell's echo when it offers its sound again. The oil stays itself, and the evening stays itself. The city, floating like a kite, held by an invisible thread, moves no faster because of anything you do, but you and it agree about what is next. You come to a small workshop near a corner where the wind is gentle all year. Inside, through the open window, you can see another brass can like yours on a shelf, ready for the next person who will make this round when you do not. It is a comfort to see it. It means the work does not depend on any single set of hands. Means the oil is a promise kept by whoever is here, and that the smell that anchors the evening will be there even when your own hands are somewhere else. You touch your can against the window ledge with a quiet clink, not enough to wake any sleeping cats inside. You move on, and as you pass the window, the oil's scent reaches toward you from the shelf, warm even though the can is cool. It is a memory waiting. A lantern near the highest point of this path needs another quick pour. You knew it would. It always drinks a little more because the wind here is a gossip and likes to tease the flame. You open the door and you pour, and the oil answers, richer this time, as if to reassure the flame that there is no lack. The smell returns to its place in your nose and in your mind, and you feel it settle, like something that has been carried up a stair and at last finds the landing. You close the latch and hold your hand over the glass just long enough to feel the warmth without questioning it. The wind takes that warmth and smears it thin like butter on toast, and the oil smell takes the chance to travel a little farther. You turn toward the long walkway that circles a pool. The pool is not water. It is air cupped by a low stone wall, open to the mist below. People toss down scraps of paper with wishes written on them sometimes. and the papers are gone in the morning, taken by the sky or by someone who knows a better place for wishes. The lanterns around the pool are close together. This is where you like to slow the most. You pour and you do not lose count because there is nothing to count in. You only move. The smell stays. It lays a thin ribbon over the rim of the stone and hangs a moment before it opens its hand. At the pool's edge, a little boy's toy boat is tied with string to the railing. It bobs on the air like it would on water. Someone has weighted its keel with a metal strip so it will keep its upright thinking. The boat's small sail is soaked with days and smells like a coat. The oil's smell folds over it gently, and it is like the boat nods. You pour for the two nearest lamps and think of how the boat might look if it could move among stars instead of drops of rain. The oil does not let you wander far into that thought. It keeps you here, breathing it, noticing how the air is warmer along the inside of the pool's curve. It lets the boat be a boat. It lets you be the person with the can. Back along this path, a single chair made of woven reed sits under a cover with an open side. Someone has left a scarf on the chair, a soft one, the kind that leaves little bits on your sleeve. The lantern near the chair is the last one you will fill on this side tonight. You pour, and the smell is the same, true as ever. You think, as you have thought before, that someone will come here later and sit in that chair and talk to the mist. They will know it is late by the smell of the lamps. They will know it is safe to stay a while because the smell means someone has walked around and seen to things. You close the latch and run your fingers over the reed on the arm of the chair, thinking of nothing and feeling what your fingers tell you. You go now to a small bridge that leads to a tower with a weather bell. The bell only rings in certain numbers when the wind wants to say particular things. Tonight it is quiet. You like it quiet. The lantern at the base of the tower is set low near the ground, the better to keep the steps visible for anyone who comes by late. You kneel and open the door. The oil smell is different this close. It is more immediate, more like the first scent when you open the can in the storeroom. You pour, and you can feel the warmth on your face, and the oil's scent lingers longer in your nostrils like a polite guest who does not want to leave too fast. You shut the door and stand and hold the railing for a breath while the smell melts into the general air. A swath of cloud trails by below, moving faster than the higher layers. The color that the lanterns make on the stone is the color of apricots and old paper. It is not the same every night, but tonight it is that mix. The oil will remember it. You know that sounds odd, but it is how you think of it. You think the oil will remember that it burned along apricot light and old paper walls, and that the person who poured it walked with slower steps and stood at the swing and thought of shawls. You think this, and then you put the thought down the way you put down a cup when you are finished. The oil does not need your thoughts. It has its own work. You pass a place where the wall curves in and a shelf holds a brass cup with a small cracked rim. It is filled with bits of string and a button without a partner. There are things like this tucked all over the city, small offerings to the day. The lantern above the shelf casts a little oval of light that holds the cup inside it like an egg. You pour and think of the oil's smell entering this small oval, making it warmer, making the button look less lonely. You hear the faintest scrape of a boot on stone far off, and then not again. And you realize it was probably your own foot, a sound returned to you by the way sound slides along curved walls. You cross to the last bridge. It is the one that carries you back to where you began, where the first lantern stands with its clean glass and its well-trimmed wick that you knew would be ready. The oil is almost gone now. The can is light in your hand in a way that makes your palm feel open even when it grips the handle. This is the part you like best, because here the smell stays with you most kindly. You are carrying not the oil itself as much as its company. It is in the rolled edge of the can. It is in the line of your sleeve where you brushed the spout against it by accident. It is in your hair, a thread that caught and held. You stop before the first lantern. You put your hand near it again, above the glass, and you feel the calm heat. The smell of the burning oil is at its most correct here, like a word used in exactly the right sentence. You do not open it. It does not need more. You only stand and let the oil's scent settle into a place in your mind that your mind reserves for, yes, this, right here. The sky has gone darker by a single shade. The distant chime at the landing gives two soft notes that sound as one. The mist below is both near and far. You can tell the difference by how the oil smells. When the mist lifts, the oil smells a little thinner. When it is close, the oil smells like it has a hand on your shoulder. Tonight, it has its hand on your shoulder. You set the brass oil can on the low stone wall beside the lantern. You do it slowly, as though the stone would like to memorize the weight. The handle makes a faint sound when it meets the wall. It is a human sound in a city that has learned to be patient with such things. You lean on your forearms and you breathe, and you notice once again the way the lamp oil wraps everything in a calm. It does not make the evening anything other than what it is. It threads through it and gives it one name. You stand without moving for a while. The flame behind the glass is very steady. It has found its height, and it does not flicker unless the wind asks a question. And even then, it answers very simply. The smell of the burning oil is layered now with the cooler air that has settled under the lintels and in the corners of the benches. It is the same smell you met at the first lamp, and yet the whole walk is in it now. Every time you opened a door, every time you tipped the can, every latch you closed like closing a page gently, all of that is folded inside this scent and given back to you as something whole. A soft sound like a dry leaf turned under a shoe comes from the far end of the bridge, and then it is quiet again. The sky is darkening in an unhurried way, and the lantern behind your left shoulder adds its shape to the scene, but it does not need you now. The oil you poured everywhere is working without your eyes on it. You can feel that without looking. It is a relief you trust. It is one of the ways you know evening from all other times. Evenings are when the work works on its own, and you are allowed to become a person who only breathes and smells and listens. You think of the storeroom and how the oil waits in its larger tins, and of how the smell there is raw and a little heavier. You think of how, even there, when you pour into the can, a faint sweetness rises. You did not notice it the first years. Now you would notice if it were missing. You let these thoughts come and go because your hands are still and your body is quiet, and there is no reason to shape them into anything other than what they already are. The smell of the lamp oil right here keeps them orderly and light. It is a librarian with a soft voice, returning books to the shelf in a way that you can hear from your chair without needing to turn. The chime gives another small voice, and then a bird calls once, without asking anyone to answer. You do not close your eyes. You watch the color change at the edge of the cloud across the way. It is not orange. It is not purple. It is a color the oil understands, and that you do not have to name. You have a cloth in your pocket, and you take it out now, not to polish anything, but because you like the way it smells when it has lived a day in this city. It smells like brass and oil and lemon, and something that is only the inside of your pocket. You fold it in half and then in half again, a small, purposeless folding that mimics the way you have moved all evening, doing one small, necessary thing after another, until the shape of the night heightens around you without effort. You pick up the can and roll it a little in your palm, feeling where the dent makes the surface less than smooth. The oil smell is stronger where the cap meets the beak. You press there with your thumb and bring it near your nose just for a breath, not to test it, just to be with it. You set the can down again and place both hands on the stone. The stone is cool and smooth, and it holds the memory of the sun in thin layers that your palms can feel if they are very still. The lantern's light holds the skin on your wrist in a soft warmth. The oil's smell holds your attention in a soft warmth too. Between them, the body of the evening is held very gently, like a small bird asleep in a pocket. A wind comes, then goes, not serious, not speaking of weather, only passing to see what will answer. The chime nudges its beads together and grazes the inside of the cup. The lantern's flame leans and draws straight again. The smell of the oil lifts and returns intact, like a shawl lifted to shake it free of dust and then laid back down exactly as it was. You think of the person who will do this round when you do not do it in years to come, and you hope for them the exact same smell and the exact same simplicity. You want this small thing to continue to be a small thing. You want the oil to keep its job and its voice. You exhale and feel nothing change besides the fact that you have made room for another breath. The evening welcomes that breath the way a neat drawer welcomes a scarf returned to it under the flicker of this lamp and the steady glow of the others. The oil's smell is fainter now because you are not bending over a cup and you are not tipping anything. It is the smell of a room after a guest has left and the chair is still warm. It is the scent that says not that something has ended, but that something has begun its hour. You do not need to go anywhere. You could sit. You do not sit. You could walk. You do not walk. You remain where you are, looking along the bridge and out over the mist. The city feels very slightly nearer, as if everything tucked itself in while you were making your round, as if your motion was permission to rest. The oil makes that nearness smell like home. It says, this is a lived-in light. It says, this is cared for darkness. You let the words go as soon as you think them. You are not speaking. You are smelling and being and letting the lamp breathe in a soft rhythm of its own. Your hands, light on the stone, relax by the smallest measure that no one could see but that you can feel. A breath of air crosses your fingers and the oil's scent leans on it and then stands. You look at the brass can and consider picking it up and carrying it to the storeroom now. You consider leaving it here for a while and going nowhere at all. The thought does not require an answer yet. It can hover like the city hovers, held up by something you do not need to name. The light through the lantern glass is steady. The scent from the flame remains the same note, a quiet vowel that holds in the mouth without closing. You wait there until the sky has loosened one more degree, until the first star is no longer a guess, but a certainty. Only then do you pick up the can. It is light enough that your arm feels a shade longer when you lift it. You hold it in your left hand now for balance and rest your right hand on the lantern's post for a moment before you turn. You look out once more at the mist below, which moves more evenly now, a sheet pulled gently across a bed by patient hands. The oil's smell is with you as you begin to walk, thinner than before, but still the thread you could follow in the dark if you had to. You walk slowly back toward the storeroom. No one passes you. The cats are probably asleep somewhere warm that smells like both food and people. The chime gives only one more soft note, almost an apology for bothering the air. The lanterns behind you burn, and their scent will hold a while after the flames are gone. And then, in the morning, the air will smell like stone and sun and the first cut of rope. For now, it smells like this, like oil warm from a gentle flame, like metal that knows your hand, like the first night you did this work and the last night you will do it, which smells the same. You pause one last time with your hand on the blue door to the storeroom. You breathe in and let the oil's presence rise to meet you, the way a friend gets up from a chair when you come into a room. You open the door and the cooler, rawer scent of the stored oil steps forward kindly, not pushing the other aside, but making room like a wide corridor makes room for a smaller one to open into it. You set the can down where it always sits. You straighten the wick trimmers in their pouch. You do not need to say anything to yourself. You stand for a moment longer because the smell is good and because it is yours tonight. Then you close the door on a hinge that does not complain, and you walk back into the evening you have been making useful and quiet. There is nothing left to sort. There is nothing left to pour. There is only the way the oil's scent finds you wherever you stand among the lanterns and the bridges and the gentle clouds. It finds you and makes a place just big enough for you to be at ease. It follows you for a few steps more, then it stays where it belongs, and you go on knowing that you could return and find it again just where you left it, warm and sure, the same as ever.